I can see a list of attendance, but I'm not sure if we're ready to
I see
start.
that we have 10 participants. I know that usually we can see one another. I'm not sure. Jerron, are you there?
Jerron is not here. Well, he might be on the side of High Point.
Maybe I can. Oh yeah, here we go. I got the list here. Got Tammy. Hey, Brandon, can you hear me? I'm not sure if we're live yet or not.
You are.
We are live.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, Commissioner McCray, if you want to go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Sure. Good evening and welcome to the December 10th, 2020 meeting of the High Point Human Relations Commission. My name is Tracy McCray. Chair Dev Bhandari cannot be with us tonight, and Vice Chair Willie Davis is expecting to join us, but is traveling and so may be detained. So I've been asked to serve as acting chair over tonight's meeting. So I'd like to call this meeting to order by asking first that Tammy Sanders help us with roll call to record everyone in attendance. Tammy?
Okay. Yes, sir. I'm showing Ms. Barker.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. McCray, you're present.
Present.
Ms. Iqbal, Commissioner Iqbal.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Commissioner Clark.
Present.
Commissioner Price.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Present.
Jerron Hollis.
Hello?
Hello? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Not Mr. Davis. Okay. Mr. Davis, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Jerron Hollis. He's not present, right? Is that correct?
He may come in.
He may come in. Okay.
Yeah.
Councilman Johnson, are you present today?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here.
Okay. Looks like we have everyone in attendance.
Great.
And waiting on Jerron Hollis.
And Commissioner McCray, if you want to go ahead and move forward, I'm sure that Jerron will be joining us soon. But if you just want to go ahead and move forward through the agenda, I think we have a quorum and we're good to go.
Absolutely. So our first order of business tonight is to approve the minutes for our last meeting, which was from November 12th. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the minutes beforehand, or do we need some time to quickly review them?
I've already read them.
Okay. Does anyone need some time, or are we all in agreement that it's good?
I'm good.
Okay. Then do I hear, if someone would like to make a motion to approve the minutes, starting by stating your name so that we have a record for that?
This is Vice Chair Willie Davis. I'll make a motion to approve.
I
Thank
second.
you. And who was it that seconded?
Kim Barker.
Great, thank you. So then the minutes have been approved. And so we will move to make a vote to approve, and we're going to do this by roll call. So once again, Tammy, would you call out the commissioner names?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Barker.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner McCray.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Iqbal.
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Okay. The vote has been approved for the minutes of November 12th.
Thank you. Excellent. And so we will move on to our second order of business, and this is probably where we'll spend most of our time tonight. Our second order of business is to discuss our commission work plan and upcoming retreat.
Come in.
And the work plan, just to remind everyone, is an overview of what we hope to accomplish in the upcoming year. So our goal tonight is to further establish some topics and general goals that might serve as guidelines for the programming that we'll plan and detail at our January retreat. At our last meeting, we proposed a number of initial ideas that were in the minutes, but ultimately we decided before establishing anything as a concrete goal for the 2021 year that we would seek input from City Council. So today, after our last meeting, Commission member Kim Barker sent a letter to Council on behalf of the Commission requesting guidance. And in response, Council member Tyrone Johnson, who serves as our liaison between the Council and Commission, has invited Council member Chris Williams to address the Commission tonight. And I believe Chris Williams has joined us, but I'm going to turn it over now to Council member Johnson to introduce Council member Williams.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Commissioner McCray. This is Councilman Johnson. Thank you so much for allowing, well, until a couple of days ago, Councilman Williams was our mayor pro diem. And so I thought that would be great in bringing him in to kind of help us kind of steer us in a way for our 2021. So without further ado, we'll bring in Councilman Chris Williams to kind of help us with that.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to thank you for having me here with you and to try to kind of dive into it right away. First I'll say I want to thank you all for serving on this board. I think I've been on council for 6 years now, and I've seen the board change just the same as the body on council. But I've always known that this particular board has an important role to play. And just looking back over the times, over the past few years, with the former committees and what happened. Actually, I will go back until like my first term, back in 2015. Some of the stuff that were occurring at the time, I thought was functional and effective, but possibly some of the delivery at the time kind of caused some issues, and then you had the disconnect between not all of the members of council and the committee, but a disconnect more or less that occurred between the two entities, and then there was a change in direction. I would try to make it this as brief and as clear as possible. I think one of the things that jarred the mindset of council back then when it came to the committee was fair housing. Councilman Johnson and I have talked over this actually quite a bit, and I've even spoken to other members about it in the past, all the way back to Jeff Golden, back from the last few terms. The key piece to remember is it was never an issue of whether or not that we were like against having the fair housing piece. It was like anything else that we would have within the city's charge, was that as much information about it, our responsibility, the legal, what legally liability we would have, when it comes to operating a program like that within the city bounds. And then the information we were given back then was true at the time, that the state had the bigger bandwidth to handle it. So just so you know, without getting too far into the weeds, that information, that choice, and everything else when it came to fair housing was pushed off to the state, because the state at the time had the capability of servicing it. We live in different times now, and there's been changes there, even on the state level. So when it comes to that element, I would say, like I told Councilman Johnson, if you have your data on hand, if we can show the case of how we have people within the city of High Point being underserved by the state because they don't have the capabilities to do the work, I would say just help us to have that in place to make the case of why and why it's necessary to have it in the city. And I don't think that you would have blowback from the majority of the body of council for you just doing the work to look into seeing how we can always be a better service to our citizens. So when it comes to that piece, I know there's no harm in actually looking into it and seeing how we can be a better service to our citizens. I would also make the case that the situation with the state has changed also. They've been minimalized to an extent of how they, how many cases, or what their caseload looks like, or how they can work through it. So that's been changed also. So like I said, like any other thing that would come before council, if we have the right information up front, I think that can be a case that can be discussed, and it would not be a waste of your efforts to go into that. When it comes to other pieces, I think one thing a wise man told me from a nonprofit was the smartest thing he could do when it came to changing directions of their program or getting it off the ground was to keep the government out of it first. Because the point was that your intent was to make the efforts to meet the needs of the community, what would be effective in helping them. And once you've established those pieces, then moving forward, you bring in your local or whatever level of government as a partner to assist in what the vision is in place and what direction you're going in. I know in our current situation across the country, and I understand those parts when it comes to how, like, relations with the community, relations with police in the community, relations between different cultures and different races. I wouldn't try to tell you what piece to take. I can only share my experience on how I've seen effective human relations commissions in different cities. Like when we take our trips to the National League of Cities, I've sat in a few sat in a few meetings and breakout sessions with some groups that worked in their respective areas, and what they were able to do and what they were able to achieve through their human relations commission. And for High Point, it's so unique in so many ways. Like we have bits and pieces of some parts of what you would see in Baltimore, some parts in different parts of Ohio, different parts of Chicago. And that's kind of what I was just pulling, what the things that I knew that we were dealing with as a city into how we kind of worked our plan out. You know, how we can work, take what they did there and implement it here in the city. So, and forgive me if I'm kind of back and forth. It's just a lot. It's a lot of information that I kind of was hoping to try to just to let you know that this particular body and the last one, I will say that we're more open-minded and with a listening ear, and you should not feel that that any endeavor that's worked to improve our community would be wasted or be met with a brick wall. I definitely feel that way with this body more than any other. So the ideas that I'll just give you some information on what's been discussed around around the table within the council and within the community and with different organizations around that. You know, these things. I've even had discussions with all ranks of police, having talks of, you know, what does High Point lack? How can we build better relations between the Black community and the police department, or minority communities and the police, especially if it's being that we have so many people from different countries living here. If the culture was back in their country that they did not deal with the police, you know, how can we kind of break the seal there? I will tell you, the current interim chief and the assistant chiefs, plenty of lieutenants, and some regular officers or just police officers have had dialogue with many. Their community, their officers who like connect to the neighborhood associations and groups, they're open. I would say, at least on my end, the reoccurring question or request from them was basically to have, if we were to do something to connect with any organization, that they would get a chance to understand what it means to police in High Point, not generalized policing across the country, but what it meant for the city of High Point. So I'm open to listen. If you got any questions, if you have concerns of maybe something that y'all are interested in doing, please share with me what those concerns are. And to me I'm more of how can we come to an agreement or a solution to still try to get that information out to the rest of the body on council and get an honest and open and opinion on it. And to me, if it's a viable solution, and please keep in mind that our shortcomings on funding, you know, just keep in mind those ideas, and we'd be glad to share those numbers with your chair or your board. I would always ask staff to be willing to express that with you, to show you our restrictions. So we've got a few. We've had some, you know, obviously for COVID and this past budget ordinance, but we just got a recent report on our possibly up and coming year. It's a little bit better than we thought it was going to be, but not like it's extensively. And then we still, and no one knows what the future holds. You know, God, I pray that everything moves in a positive direction. But if you got any questions, if y'all want to form your ideas, and you can call me. My number's posted. Tyrone has access. Sharon, everybody has access to me. And if you need if you desire more than just 2 members of council, you wanted to get buy-in from other members, that's doable also. just let us know how we can help you to move forward.
Okay. Well, this is Vice Chair Davis. Councilman Williams, one of my concerns I've been talking about with this board, I think it was pretty much what you were saying. I've all been talking about fair housing because that is one of the first things that's in our bylaws. And I really think that High Point has the capability with staff, with council, with this commission. I think we're just as good as anyone else. One of the things I heard, it was said as a joke, but it made a lot of sense from Dr. Cobain when he was building the stadium. It was Greensboro has bathroom, Winston has bathroom, Raleigh has bathroom. So why can't we have bathroom? So let's say that is why I feel like we as a commission, as a board, we should have our own capability to investigate a lot of issues with fair housing here in High Point. And I'd like to see, me personally, I'd like to see that moving forward, on a positive level. Because I think it's very frustrating for a lot of people I know that I talk to that has problems, and you tell them, well, you got to go to Raleigh. You got to, you can make a complaint, but they're going to send it to Raleigh. That right there is very disheartening to a lot of people, very discouraging, because they know if it goes to Raleigh, what's the chance of them hearing anything back? Or by the time they do hear anything back, they're going to be put out, or something else, it's going to be long done and over with. So I would like to see High Point moving forward with being able to investigate a lot of issues with fair housing from our citizens. I think our citizens deserves that. And like I say, I got all the confidence in the world in High Point, in our staffing department, in our council, and this committee here. I was just wondering, what is your opinion about that?
How we doing, Mr. Davis? I'll tell you, when it comes to that, is pure and simple. I've always based decisions on facts, on information, on data. And we know, if the data will tell you if there's a need, the data will tell you if it's being addressed. It'll tell you if you have the capabilities to address it. And going in that direction, I fully understand that. There's been cases in the past where not necessarily fair housing, but code issues, where you basically, honestly, you had a slumlord that was taking advantage of people who couldn't pay for market rate rents. And what ended up happening was basically some of these people were living in places without heat. They put in a request to have the heat repaired. The person didn't basically want to do it. Code enforcement was called in, and obviously the house was not habitable. It's always been the case where, the first thing we were doing or requesting staff was to scramble and try to help them find a family who didn't have a choice in this. How do we help them try to find some place to go? How do we connect them to our partners, or public or private, to get them access to housing? When it comes to the current cases, I guess the cases, at least from what I've been told, I haven't had this in my wheelhouse directly, because it hadn't been something that was placed in front of the body on a regular basis. When it comes to fair housing, it was kind of handled the way that you just described. The staff would basically share the information with the complainant to how to get connected to the state. So that didn't come to us. But just from what I understand, a lot of it in High Point anyway has been leaning to disabled or disability, getting access to it. My thing is this, and the same thing I told Tyrone before, and I've told other members before. We need the information to make the case, to do it. If we don't have that, I mean, everything you just mentioned, if we just say, if it can be just as simple as, okay, we've had 12 cases of fair housing, we've sent 12 cases over, and I'm just making this up, y'all. If we had 12 cases of fair housing, we sent 12 cases to the state over the past 6 months, heard 0. Okay, that's an issue because of the time constraints on what's happening with the families that are getting it. If we had have that information, and then it's a matter of us having to talk, okay, if the state is ineffective and our citizens are hurting, what can we do as a city? What does that look like? And it doesn't take the moon and an act of Congress to get the information to us and for us to figure out how to make this work. It's just as simple as, okay, Greensboro double the population. How many people do you have in that department? How much does it cost? What's the process? How long does it take? You know, who does what in the office? How do you make that fit within your budget ordinance? Because like everything else, it costs. And we just need to find out how we can make that work. Are there grants, federal dollars that can help us, assist us to do this? Is there state grants? Any of those elements can be looked at. But I don't see there's just a straight unilateral answer just to say, okay, we're going to do it starting next month, and then that work has to be put in. I would ask, you know, how do we work this out in this committee, or how do we have the conversation with staff to move forward to do something like that? At least help us see it as a body. Help us see those cases not getting dealt with, not getting heard, and how do we work to assist those families, and how do we fix this issue? Like I said, the cases that have come to me via phone, email, or anything else, or even people actually coming up to my job and talking to me, has been more of code enforcement, not the fair housing piece. Fair housing has an element in there, but basically the guys or these individuals have been equal opportunity absentee landlords. It didn't make a difference who was in there paying whatever that rent was. It was just those houses and places were subpar, substandard, and we had to address it through code enforcement. But when it comes to somebody not being rented because of their race or because they're disabled and they don't want to have to be bothered with making their changes to their property, all those elements, I have not been given that. I have not been presented with those. Just that's where we are. And I hope that helps, at least to give you a picture of where I'm trying to come from, or where how we've addressed things in the past.
I hear what you're saying, but once my issue is, once they realize there's not a body, to say that, well, you're gonna have to go to a council person, they gotta first get to you, and they got jobs, and we are supposed to be a bridge between citizen and council or the problem, and there's nothing there, and there's no bridge there. That's my issue. There's no bridge there for the citizens, and I think that we need to start building a bridge for them.
Councilman Williams, this is Kim Barker. You indicated that, and first of all, thank you for being here. But you had indicated in your comments that, the data is key, and that you have access to data. If we wanted to find out from data relative to what Willie was just talking about, where would we go to get it?
The only way that I can know, the data has to come from staff. Only the people who call into the city to make that complaint and that are referred to the state would have that information. They don't call us. They don't call your council person directly. If I did get that, And I'll tell you how I typically work. If I did get that call, I would call staff to help me make sure that I'm giving that constituent the correct information and where to go or what the next step is. That was one of the biggest push from the earliest body of council, was that our customer service, when it comes to dealing with citizens and any issues, whether it's professional or personal, residential or commercial, was that we did more than just tell them we don't do this. You're to share the information or connect them to that information or a party that can help them. So if the data, as far as the phone calls, that still should be with the staff.
So
I'm sorry, excuse me, Commissioner Barker, to add to what Councilman Williams said, we do, from the staff level, we do have data for cases, walk-ins, what ends up being fair housing complaints. We have that information, so that's available. So the staff, our Human Relations Division, would be where that comes from. I didn't mean to cut you off on your question, but we have.
No, it's okay, because I was thinking more to what Willie had talked about, having to go to Raleigh. Do we have the stats on how many things get sent to Raleigh from High Point?
Yeah,
I'm just.
Well, and I guess at this point, Jelani, if you can kind of chime in a 60-second version and explain to maybe some who are not as familiar with the process, what happens now, and from Raleigh references, and let's talk specifically about fair housing. I think that might help cut down on some of the additional questions. And that was a great question, Commissioner Barker.
Sure, no problem, Gerard. So, we're talking about fair housing investigations. The way that HUD does that on a local level is having what they call FAP agencies. And so those agencies can exist within a municipality. They can also exist at the state level, with the North Carolina Human Relations Commission being one of those FAP agencies. So since we're not a FAP agency, we serve essentially as an informational hub. So when a call comes to us, when a walk-in comes into the office, we talk to them at length about the fair housing process, because it's just that, it's a process. There's an intake stage, an investigation stage, and then you have a determination stage, and even a potential legal review stage, and can even make it to federal court. For the folks that walk into the office, it's important to set that expectation, because some are facing pending evictions. Some are currently homeless, and you just want to kind of lay out what to expect in that process if they're looking to file a fair housing case. So currently we serve as a referral source to the State Human Relations Commission. So what I try to do to the best of my ability is explain that process, tell them, based on the facts that you've told me, this is what I see. Keep in mind that the State Human Relations Commission will do its own intake process, where they look at, the subject matter that's being covered. Is this a proper respondent? Does it fall within the statute of limitations? All the things that have to be put in place before it can even move forward and be accepted by HUD. The concept of a FAP agency, you're a local arm of HUD. So they monitor you, but you have signed a memorandum of agreement with HUD to do their investigations in your jurisdiction. Essentially, in order to even start that process of becoming a FAP agency, the municipality has to enact a fair housing ordinance. So that's step one, is before HUD will start making the assessment of whether you can be substantially equivalent or become a FAP agency. They want to see that you enact a fair housing ordinance. And then at that point, you start the process of making sure structurally you're in place to actually handle investigations. You can be put into an interim process of assessment. So it's a process, but a FAP agency is a local arm of HUD that does fair housing investigations.
Excuse me, Jelani, and thank you for that. I think as we talk about this discussion, and I know that for everybody that's listening, this is a discussion about our work plan, but I think this is really a beneficial part of that discussion. I know there may be some people with other questions about other aspects, but I did want to put a bow on this. So Jelani, can you talk a little bit as far as investigations? We were talking about numbers and data, just so people have an understanding of what we're talking about here. Coming from the agency that you worked for previously for the city of Winston, I think there were some minimum, based on the HUD standard, there were a minimum number of cases based on the city size that HUD expected Winston to work through. So Winston's population is double ours or more, if I'm not mistaken. Can you talk about, just again briefly, what the number of cases was that HUD expected the human relations arm to work through in Winston for a city over 250,000, I believe?
Sure. The minimum caseload that they expected a city of that size to have was 8 cases. Now, keep in mind, fair housing cases can be very detailed. It's detailed work. The HUD gives any investigator about 100 days to do one investigation. So while 8 cases may not sound like a ton, they're very dense and they're very involved. 8 cases is kind of a reference point for a city of Winston-Salem size. I think last I checked, we may have referred in the ballpark within the last year about 15 cases to the state. Now, once we refer that, we're not a party to that investigation. So it's not the state's obligation to give us updates on the case, to tell us whether it made it through intake or not. The mass majority, or the large part of those cases, were disability cases. That reflects a national trend. With fair housing cases, the majority of them are disability cases, reasonable accommodation cases, reasonable modification cases.
Okay. Well, thank you. This has been very helpful to understand. And the reason I was asking is because it may be something that is perceived as a big need, but if we don't have the capability of doing something and really making a dent in it, we might be best served by putting our time and efforts in another area where we do have teeth, if that makes sense. And I may be hearing this wrong, but.
Well, let me ask you this, Jelani. This is Vice Chair Davis. You were saying Winston was a size twice our size, and their number was 8. And more than likely, our number wouldn't be that high because we're half that size. But I might, if you're looking at, we got this COVID. We don't know how long it's gonna last. We don't. I know a lot of things are geared toward COVID, and if people are going to be come up with cases to where where they're not being treated fairly in housing, but geared that is geared toward COVID. In time we go to Raleigh, it's going to be way too late, and we don't start moving toward that area now. That's my opinion.
The only thing I would add to that, and I know we don't want to belabor this point, the only thing I would add to that is what 8 represented an increase of what HUD mandated from that office. So originally, when I joined the office in 2014, was 5. And so in some years, there were 20 cases that we received. We were well over that minimum. And so you can't predict that. One apartment complex, if you have a pattern and practice case, or someone that has engaged in numerous acts of discrimination, can account for 8 cases in a year. So it can be comprised of a lot of different things, but the 8 numbers, just to give you an idea of what will be expected from a municipality of that size, and maybe what we could see here.
And I think it's important for context as we flesh this out and try to put this particular point to bed, unless there's some continued discussion from other commissioners, is that I think we have to be careful not to paint the picture of our partners in Raleigh as incapable. I think it's a better analogy to use that there are lots of bricks in that wagon, because every municipality that does not have substantial equivalents, their cases, if you look at a state the size of North Carolina, those are all going through Raleigh. So this is not saying that our partners are incapable. I don't want that to be the takeaway. I think it's more of lightening the load, taking a few concrete or cinder blocks out of their wagon so that they can focus. There are a lot of municipalities that are much smaller than High Point who don't have the resources that we have. And so I think the discussion being put in terms of helping to lessen the burden rather than, saying that our partners in Raleigh are immediately shredding documents or cases that come in from High Point. I don't want to paint Raleigh as the bad guy, so to speak. The other thing I would say is that being substantial equivalent or fair housing is a program. This is not simply, although one of the features that municipalities have is that investigative authority, we're talking about establishing a program that benefits tenants as well as landlords. There are landlords that would call into a substantial equivalent agency to make sure they're in compliance. They're to make sure that they have their voices heard if there were a frivolous complaint by a tenant. So what we're talking about is a program. And as we've said before, it's a decision that comes at the decision-making level of a municipality, but it's a decision to implement a program. And so it's more than just a case number, although that's what's driven by some of HUD's metrics. It's actually a program that's in place that provides education, that provides enforcement, that sets an example. So it's more robust than just an investigator with a magnifying glass going to an address and collecting evidence. So I think that's important context for our newer commissioners who are not as familiar with some of that terminology. Being respectful of all of our time, but especially our guest, Councilmember Williams. Mr. Chair, if it pleases the chair, can we have some feedback or some questions, not fair housing related?
I think that's a great point, Mr. Hollis. Thank you. I was going to say, it sounds like the discussion that I'm hearing, just to kind of sum it up, is that a lot of the commission members are interested in this. I'm hearing also from Mr. Biggs that it takes other pieces outside of the commission to make this happen. And so it seems like something that we can all potentially, and we will take maybe a vote on this later, that this could maybe be a focus, but we should also have other things in plan, given that there are other stakeholders who would also have to be moving forward concurrently. And we can say, this could be part of our work plan to say, we're going to, as a commission, put our resources into making this happen as much as possible and getting ourselves prepared for that. And that would be a good thing. But also, I think that to second what Mr. Hollis said, it sounds like there might be other things that we would like to consider. I know there were many ideas brought up at our previous meeting. Is there anything else that you would like to discuss while we have Councilmember Williams here?
I'd just like to ask Mr. Council Williams one last question. It's not really anything to do with fair house. At the beginning, I heard Councilman Jones said, Johnson said, up to a few weeks ago, he was Mayor Pro Tem, which I would think you still were. Who's the new Mayor Pro Tem, if you don't mind telling us?
Britt Moore, and just,
oh, okay.
Yeah, well, it was a 2-year term, which was kind of odd because we had done 2 years before. So what we did was we just reverted back to the original single year term on the pro tem, kind of something I wanted to do and got a consensus with the rest of council to do that. That way you give other senior members of council the opportunity to serve.
Oh, okay. Well, appreciate it. And I probably appreciate you your service. I think this your second time as pro tem?
Yeah, it was.
Correct?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. You always done a great job, I thought. in my personal opinion. I always thought you've done a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams and Mr. Davis. One idea that I had, since I don't see anyone yet coming forward, just to move ideas along, that I'd like Mr. Williams' thoughts on, is that one idea I proposed last time was in line with what you were talking today about, just improving relations within the city. You mentioned the police force, as well as just citizens and differing opinions coming from different groups and different identities. I had suggested the idea of possibly taking a note from Charlotte Human Relations Commission, that they had all the members trained in conflict negotiation, and to help basically conflict resolution, so that they could not only offer some conflict resolution among the citizens of the city, but also that they could offer additional conflict resolution trainings to help their citizens themselves kind of ripple effect, being able to have bigger conversations about things that they disagree on, or potentially even on more serious issues where it is actually things in dispute. Would that be something that you think would be in line with what you were asking for earlier?
Commissioner McCray, you said members, you were talking about the police department?
No, the commission members, the Human Relations Commission members are trained in conflict resolution, and then they themselves offer conflict resolution trainings for citizens.
Okay. Yeah, that actually, I think as an example to the rest of our citizens, I think that would be a great idea. I think honestly that almost falls in line with some of our requests when it comes to local leadership. Some of the local directors and so forth, they direct us with the city. Some of their training, we wanted to kind of, hang on one second. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I got this weird pop-up that just popped up on my tablet. Give me a second to try to get this off because I can't. Oh, well, I won't touch it. I'll just let happen what happened. But yeah, I think that would be a great idea, and I think that's plausible. The training, can you give me any information on like who facilitates the training? How is it done? Is it a consultant group or is it?
I don't know exactly what happens there. This was in our previous meeting. Mr. Biggs had provided other human relation committees, commissions, like what they do. And that was one of the things that I specifically saw, that they specifically attend offer break the cycle community conversations. And they also offer free conflict resolution training for youths, adult groups, and organizations. I believe they have a request form on their commission website, and then a member of the community relations team gets in touch with them. And it sounds to me like the council or the commission members themselves are not necessarily doing the conflict resolution so much as they're training other groups to do it. Though, of course, if we were to become a FAP agency, that would obviously be helpful skills and well in line with what we might be dealing with in terms of talking about fair housing, to also be aware of kind of how to negotiate some of these difficult things in addition to the legal aspects of fair housing.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And Mr. Chair, I think as a result of some of the conversations about what other municipalities or what other agencies are doing, I think there would also be some overlap in the conflict resolution piece in the individual department. So the staff would be that basis for the conflict resolution, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jelani, and then the commissioners would also underpin that with their specific training or support. But I think it is I think what you're talking about, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jelani, is the commission and the staff are in sort of in concert with that particular approach.
Sure, and you know, I saw this in Winston-Salem when I was part of their human relations department. There were times because we were landlord-tenant mediators. There's where we actually would meet either remotely or in person with landlords and tenants to resolve disputes. So there were conferences. I think Association for Conflict Resolution would have an annual conference, and they will offer, you know, modules for training in that respect. So I do think there are organizations that can provide that kind of training, not only to staff but also commissioners as appropriate.
Mr. Chair, you talk when you were speaking about, are you referring to like council? I mean, like committee like us, like this committee here, being trained to go out with the police department on call on radio calls, and if they have a conflict with like between a husband and wife, or say that it's a young man with a young African American male that's not really relating with a police officer. Are you saying that you would like to see us trained to where we may be able to talk to that person to calm them down or to get them to see it in a different light, the situation in a different light?
That's a great question, Mr. Davis. And I do not see that as the goal of that. Specifically, I think that there are a lot of people who would be, you know, much better trained for that kind of intense conflict negotiation situation. As I understand it, and I could definitely do more research if folks are interested in pursuing this as something that we might consider for our work plan in 2021. As I understand it, this is more to offer conflict resolution skills to the community members. So we would not be on the front line necessarily of any actual conflict resolution, so much as we would make ourselves, or potentially staff also would make themselves available to offer such trainings to the citizens. So it specifically would help share among the community conflict resolution styles, benefits of active listening, tools for de-escalation, but we would not be doing any ride-alongs or, you know, there are plenty of amazing folks who already have such skills, and I'm sure they're beyond what we are capable of.
And if I'm allowed, just to let you know, the conversations have taken place when it comes to adding that element to the current police, and the homework has been done on it to look into, because there's some actual, well, there were, not sure if it is at the moment, but there were like federal funding that would pay for a trained professional to approach specific calls for service, and instead of it just being an officer to address an issue, they would actually have someone in that line to approach those actual issues. I will ask this: if there's any appetite of connecting and working with the police in High Point, and I'm speaking from my experience working with them long before I got on council. A little bit of history: I worked as a mentor and other basically jobs with High Point Community Against Violence, and that goes back as far as 20 years. My connection with the police started that far back, and the main idea of that was that I wanted to make sure that the local police officers not only understood me, and I did it for my son and the rest of and some of my family, but I wanted them to better understand my community, have a connection there. I would say connecting with the police, if nothing else, do the ride-alongs, the Citizen Academy, just conversations with officers. That helps you understand the specific issues that High Point deals with. Because I learned a long time ago, no agency is the same, but there has been a lot of work and funding paid into the High Point Police Department for training for these very reasons. We've allocated funding to help them better connect to and work with the police and to de-escalation tactics, all those things. So I would say if there's something in the works, or if there was any interest or appetite to that line, I would say have the conversation with them, do those many options that they offer, to just give you a better understanding of where it starts from. Nothing's perfect. Our police agency is not perfect, but if you understood the efforts that has gone into it in the past and currently, then at least you would see that it is definitely not as bad as some of the other agencies. And I don't know if I articulated that correctly, but I think that's important.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Mhm.
just to piggyback off of Councilmember Williams, I just wanted to remind the commission and also bring this up to some of our newer commissioners, a program that was on our previous work plan. I know that's far in our rearview mirror. COVID kind of stopped many of those programs from getting implemented, but a homework hangout program is a program that I actually participate in here in Winston-Salem through my church, Oak Community Church, where we actually do work with youth on a regular basis and complete their homework. Now I'm speaking past tense. COVID has kind of stalled that, and I would assume that this would be a future project, but it does play into what Councilmember Williams talked about. What I kind of envision with that is staff, commissioners, along with police officers and first responders, working with local youth on completing their homework. Now, the anchoring function there is to get homework done. What you learn is by interfacing with youth who historically may not be always interfacing with officers in a positive way, create a relationship. And that's the goal of the program, is that if we can create this connecting force where officers, commissioners are interfacing on a regular basis for something good, like completing homework, it creates a relationship that can change the view of how they see one another. That's just something to remind. I know we discussed it at our last retreat. That was a while ago, and I know some of those in-person type programs have been put on hold, but that's all I would say, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Biggs, and thank you, Councilman Williams. And
Hey,
also, go ahead, Willie.
Go ahead. Hey, back to Mr. Councilman Williams. Did you say something about a citizen participation program, something like that? I heard you was talking earlier. You said it was a Citizen Academy. Yeah, can you? I don't know anything about that, or never heard anything about that. Can you give us a little information about it?
Well, basically, you get it's basically police boot camp light. You do everything. You go through a lot of the process that they do, even some of the driving, multiple. Now, I would have to have a conversation with the police in this COVID environment, what that looks like now, if they're still doing it or if that's postponed. But yeah, they offer that to citizens, and they take X amount, like per quarter, to go through that process. It's an eye-opening experience.
Wow, something I've learned something. I appreciate you enlightening me on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an interesting program. That's cool and very neat. So we have two ideas aside from the fair housing proposed tonight. Does anyone have any other things that they would like to reiterate for our work plan? I would like to take a vote tonight so that we can have some established goals that we could work on at our retreat. I don't think that means that something couldn't possibly ever be added or anything like that, but I would like us to have something concrete that we could start thinking about in preparation for the retreat. So does anyone have any other ideas they'd like to bring up again?
This is Kim Barker, and last year we had a youth service project that was on our plan, and I would like to see that initiative carry forward if possible. Again, it's all dependent on COVID, but pulling all of our youth together to help our city, not only help them get to know each other better and hopefully break down some barriers, but also help our community at the same time. It's kind of a two-edged win.
This is Betsy Clark, and Kim, maybe in partnership with that a youth service project, there's an organization called Out of the Garden.
Yes.
That was started by a couple, and they address a lot of the, the food shortage issues for families. It's actually, I was looking up the address because I was considering nominating them for, what is the,
Humanitarian of the year.
yeah, the Humanitarian, but it's actually the physical address is actually located in Greensboro, even though it's like right off of Sandy Ridge Road. But I think that organization is a great one. My son goes down there to volunteer once a week when he can, to help with the food, distribution and organization and all that. So that's an option too, I think.
Kim, I'd like to ask, this is Race McCray. I'd like to ask just a few questions about that, just to give you time, since we've had further discussions of the other policies more fully. Was this a policy? Was this a program that we were working on to establish, like, what we organize this youth kind of program, or was this to work with a partner on something that's already existing, or do you call the details?
I was thinking that it would be like something we could start, and we'd work with the different faith organizations, the different, YMCAs or wherever the youth are. And I believe our plan last year had that we would ask the mayor to come up with, maybe 3 things in the city that these youth could do that could better the city. And it was us doing it. I mean, I've organized big things like this myself in other venues. It's just usually a very successful, all the way around, kind of inspiring activity. And I would foresee getting businesses to contribute so that, all the participants, get T-shirts and little something. And I think we probably could do it to get the companies to volunteer.
Sure.
And funds for it.
Probably true. And so this would, it doesn't have to be this same exact kind of project, but maybe like what the city does with the big sweep, where they get a lot of their employees to come out and do cleaning up on the roadside or something like that. Like a one-day, project where we can then have a specific target, something like that.
Exactly. And it may only be 3-4 hours max. I mean, when you're dealing with youth, you wouldn't want to do a whole day thing. that could be a little bit more difficult. But
yeah.
I just feel strongly that, instilling this mindset in our youth, it just grows up with them, and it helps for years to come.
Chairman McRae.
Go ahead, Councilman Williams.
If I may, Commissioner Baker, I will also submit the opportunity of these youth working with Operation Inasmuch. It's what we do typically twice a year. It's handled out of, I guess our point of contact would be Mike McNair with the Community Housing Neighborhood Development Department. And basically, we just provide a day of service to owner occupants in homes of distressed areas at no cost to them. We do home repairs, and a lot of it is also, it's just like cleaning up. It's picking up, and that's been super impactful for our city. So just throwing that out at
you. Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, Jelani. And when I think a couple of meetings ago we had a discussion. I don't know if we everybody wasn't. I don't think everybody was on the commission then that's here now. So I'll say it again. Two words that I think we keep in mind throughout the work plan: partnership and coordination. One great example we had not too long ago, someone had a great idea that said, hey, we have a food insecurity issue here in High Point. Let's do something about it. And so we started having some of the discussion. And then we had agencies that said, hey, we're already doing this. We'd love to get your help. So I think as I see our work plan suggestions and our programs falling into probably two main categories. One is areas where someone else has already kind of laid the groundwork and we're just plugging in. Maybe we're a clearinghouse, maybe we're coordinating, maybe we're doing something like that. And then the other panel, sort of something that would be where we are uniquely positioned, we're the only ones doing it, or that if we don't do it, no one else will do it, kind of thing. So I think there's room for both, but just kind of keep in mind that, like Operation Inasmuch, like Great American Cleanup, like Big Sweep, there are other programs that are out there that we could definitely feed into that would help us achieve that same goal that I think Commissioner Barker and Commissioner Clark and others had talked about. So just keep that in mind as we talk about programs. There are a lot of agencies and nonprofits out here that are putting a dent in some of this. So for some of them, we can kind of help them, pick up the other side of the load so that they can have it easy carrying.
Excellent. Yeah, Mr. Biggs, did you have something to add?
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say, just to put a point on that, again, it was a while ago, so I know a lot of this has escaped us, but with Operation Inasmuch, actually right before COVID hit, we had approached them, at least staff did, about youth potentially taking on part of their kind of house maintenance day or their cleanup day, and they were open to that. They were very excited about the idea of youth helping them with that. So if that's something that we want to look at moving forward, just know that they've already kind of expressed that
That's awesome.
that could work with them.
And just to kind of tie that up so we can move on if there's any final suggestions, I think that maybe a great way to put this in a work plan would be to say, we are going to help coordinate youth to, where we are maybe actively recruiting youth and helping manage that portion of a partnership so that we could, it's a workable, feasible goal and something that might appeal to us as commissioners, while at the same time saying we're going to partner with, say, Operation Inasmuch, and maybe if they don't have the capability to, say, manage this portion, we will also serve as team leaders on the day, something to that effect. That can be, all the details of that could be worked out at our retreat, but that is just one way to kind of focus this. So I'm going to open it up. Are there any other final suggestions that any commissioners have not stated of things we so far have? Conflict resolution, training, homework help, and youth volunteer program of some kind.
Let me ask this. Is there something out there that where we could partner with and to help feed our elderly? I know we have Meals on Wheels and things like that, but is there anything else out there that we can, because not everyone have the capability to come out and get food sometimes. Maybe we can partner with someone during this COVID to take food to someone. It's not necessarily going to their house or anything, but just leave it on the porch or something like that. If anyone interested in maybe doing anything like that, or is there someone out there that we can partner with to do something like that? And by the way, go ahead.
Chairman, if I can, Mr. Davis, the best resource in the city of High Point when it comes to that element is the Greater High Point Food Alliance.
Right.
That was built up, ground up to be of service to High Point and some parts around. And I know of no better local resource when it comes to connecting people of helping to alleviate food insecurities and things as such.
This is Kim Barker again, and I had raised this question before, and maybe I'm just getting too old and I can't remember if we had an answer. Sometimes I feel like we can have all these different ideas, and some of the comments we just made where, we can coordinate, we can partner. Is there a list anywhere of, faith organizations and humanitarian organizations, that we can just say, oh, here it is, and look them all up? And if there's not, maybe that's another way that we could actually help, is creating something like that, because I don't know, maybe it exists and I've just never found it. but I think there's a lot of good things out there, and it would be easier to coordinate if we knew about them. Is there a list like that anywhere?
I'm not aware of any particular list. In my work at the library, I've kind of created informal lists like this of just organizations that we partner with and can partner with. But I know that also certain organizations kind of create smaller lists, if you will. So since Councilman Williams mentioned Greater High Point Food Alliance, they have an app that just kind of coordinates all food help in the area. And you can just go on there and say, where are all the people giving food? Where are all the people accepting donations? Where are the soup kitchens? Where are places where you can go pick up boxes of food, things like that. So that would be an example where a group is already curating a smaller list, but that's separate from a mega list, if you will. And I like your idea of kind of curating something that might be useful there.
Thank you. It would be helpful.
I would say, and I hope Mr. Hollis and Mr. Biggs don't look at me sideways when I say this. When it comes to a lot of the local nonprofits that provide service in the past have like applied for nonprofit allocation dollars annually. That list of that resides somewhere in the confines of the city, obviously, because we've worked through that process. I would say that I guess that would be maybe the CAC, or have a conversation with once again the community development housing with Mike McNair. If you were to maybe request a list that you can start with, just a possibility of working that way to get started.
CAC.
Yeah, I also think I'm also part of the community conversations with World Relief, which does a lot with immigrant services and legal aid. And I know that they obviously also have large lists of folks that they can turn to and are part of those community conversations, as does the YWCA, who runs a social justice committee that is, again, very active in inviting partners to come to. So I think that sounds like an interesting idea to me, creating a directory that at least could be something that would be a deliverable, essentially, could potentially, I think that it does bring up some issues of where could this be available and hosted? Could it be on the city website? Would that go against any policies or anything like that, especially if there are faith organizations? I know that there are sometimes city freedom of religion things that could be involved there. But I think that is a really interesting idea of something that could be manageable. So
especially if we could automate it in some way and maybe get a few IT buddies to donate time.
Sure. So I'm going to just move us on. Is there any other final things that people wanted to suggest? We have 4 now, if we include the curating a directory of helper organizations. Okay. With that said, then I'm going to say, do we, just to ask Mr. Biggs or Mr. Hollis, do we need at this point, since we have 4 pretty solid goals, do we need to take a vote of any kind to say that these are established things that we'd like to work on?
I think a vote would be appropriate, even if these serve as the baseline for discussion for the retreat. I think that would be a good measure to kind of show solidarity and what direction that the commission is trying to go for this 2021 campaign.
Excellent. So even if this were to be narrowed later or slightly altered, this would be our general goals. I'm going to propose them, I think, one by one. Just the commission members can do a roll call vote. Tammy can potentially run this and record it. I think it'd be helpful for us just to say, if you're interested in this as a goal, vote aye. If you think that this is not the best use of our time, say no. And we will then kind of, if we need to, if we think all of these are phenomenal ideas at the retreat, I think we could narrow it down to the ones that seem most doable, if that sounds appropriate.
Yeah,
So,
Mr. Chair, excuse me, and if you could, I think you kind of alluded to it earlier. When you go through the items, like we did last time, we ask one of our team members, Tammy, to just call the roll for each, and that will probably be a little smoother.
absolutely.
Thank you.
So Tammy, if you want to run all of them through, the first was fair housing, which I guess it seems like we already have somewhat of an agreement, but we might want to take a vote to see if we want to pursue that as a goal in concurrence with other moving pieces. The second
Okay.
one was conflict resolution training. The third one was offering some kind of in-person homework help, which might be dependent on our ability to meet with COVID, though hopefully with a vaccine that will become feasible. The fourth was a youth volunteer program of some kind that Ms. Barker presented. And the fifth would be curate a directory of helper organizations.
Are you saying create a directory?
I said
Okay.
curate, C-U-R.
Curate. Okay, curate. I got you.
Big difference.
Thank you for clarifying that, though.
Curate a directory for what, Mr. McCray?
I just it could be any wording, but I said of helper organizations. I was trying to be as broad as possible to include nonprofit, faith organizations, anyone providing service that might be useful to the citizens that we serve.
Okay. Are you ready to start the voting process?
Yes, please. Let's start.
Okay. We're going to start with the first work plan idea, which was fair housing. Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Price,
Aye.
Commissioner McCray,
Aye.
Commissioner Barker,
Aye.
Commissioner Iqbal,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Okay, that's been voted upon and approved by a vote of 7-0 for the work plan for the fair housing. The second one would be for the conflict resolution. Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Iqbal,
Aye.
Commissioner Barker,
Aye.
Commissioner McCray,
Aye.
Commissioner Price,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Okay. The conflict resolution work plan, it was approved as well by a vote of 7-0. The next work plan would be the in-person homework help. Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Price,
Aye.
Commissioner McCray,
Aye.
Commissioner Barker,
Aye.
Commissioner Iqbal,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Okay, the work plan for the in-person homework help was approved by a vote of 7-0. The fourth work plan be the youth volunteer program, and that would be voted upon now from Commissioner Clark,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Iqbal,
Aye.
Commissioner Barker,
Aye.
Commissioner McCray,
Aye.
Commissioner Price,
Aye.
and Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
Okay. The youth volunteer program work plan was approved by a vote of 7-0. The fourth work plan to curate a directory for helper organizations. And that we would start with the voting process with Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Price,
Aye.
Commissioner McCray,
Aye.
Commissioner Barker,
Aye.
Commissioner Iqbal,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Okay, the curator directory for the Help Organizations Work Plan was approved by a vote of 7-0.
If I may, Mr. Chair, that maybe we could, I don't want the clerk to get on me for Robert's rules and such. So maybe that's our straw poll vote, and maybe a collective, maybe a motion to receive all those collectively to move forward on the work plan. We'll put a bow on it.
Absolutely. Did we also do, I might have missed this. Did we also do the youth volunteer program? And okay, I was just making sure.
Yes, that was the third one.
I forgot to note it down in my notes. Excellent. Yes, so do we have a motion to accept all of these straw polls as the basis for our work plan?
This is
All right.
Betsy Clark, and I make a motion.
And this is Kim Barker, and I second it.
Great. Can we vote to approve this as our tentative work plan to be worked on at the retreat? Tammy, would you give us a roll call?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Barker,
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
Commissioner Price,
Aye.
Commissioner McCray,
Aye.
Commissioner Davis,
Aye.
Commissioner Iqbal,
Aye.
and Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Okay, the motion, motion for the draw polls to be made for the upcoming retreat were approved by a vote of 7-0.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Tammy.
You're welcome.
That looks like a great work plan. That moves us on to our last two things, which will be much shorter, I assure you. The first is just to have a brief talk about when we can meet for the retreat. Already, because go ahead, Mr. Hollis.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. If Councilman Williams, you're welcome to stay until the wee hours of the morning with us. We appreciate you answering some of those questions, and you and Councilmember Johnson giving us some direction on moving forward. But if for the sake of your time, if you want to kind of drop out for these next pieces, that's fine. But just wanted to give you that option now.
Actually, thank you. Speaking of homework, I got some myself. So I want to go ahead and get to it if I can. And
Let us know if you need help.
Councilman Williams.
Yes, sir.
Councilman Williams, this is Councilman Johnson. Thank you again so much for taking the time and listening to me come to you and speak with you on some things, and of course joining us this evening. So thank you again. I definitely appreciate it, as well as I'm sure the rest of the commissioners do.
Absolutely. I think I speak for the commission tonight to just say that your input was invaluable and very helpful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and thank you all. And this was actually my first Human Relations Commission meeting. Never been to one. So I've always done everything else, but actually kind of missed this. But this is great. Thank you for having me.
Have a good evening.
Thank you for
Okay.
that. Oh, sorry, Mr. Davis, did you want to say something?
No, I would just tell Councilman Williams to have a good evening. That's all.
No,
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And you all have a good evening. Be safe.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. That was an excellent point. We want to value our council members' time. And so the last two things will be fast. The first is we need to decide on a date for our upcoming retreat to discuss these. However, because the chair is missing today, Dev Bhandari, I would like us to at least consider that we maybe come up with some potential dates, or at least acknowledge if there are any dates for a weekend in January that you could not meet, but otherwise that we perhaps do this through a digital platform where we can record all of our dates and coordinate together that way, so that we don't, the concern would be that we don't want to exclude, especially the chair, for such an important meeting. And ultimately, we want to make sure we have a quorum for anything that we're available for, so that we can actually approve anything at the work plan. Does anyone have any thoughts about that?
Mr. Chair, if I may, the only thing I would add is I think at the last retreat, just to try to make sure we ensured that we had a quorum. We did send out a doodle poll for everyone to participate in. As the chair mentioned, we would be shooting for mid-January, and those Saturdays I think are the 9th potentially and the 16th. So I just want those to kind of be on your radar. Again, I will probably, myself or Tammy, will be sending out a poll to kind of gauge what weekends work best. We tend to have these in the morning. We give ourselves ample time to map out the details of what's going to be included on the work plan. So looking at least 3 to 4 hours of your time in the morning. Mornings seem to conflict less with people's schedules. So just have that on your radar and be thinking about that.
Mr. Biggs, do we need to make any decisions today, or is this just something we can accomplish through the doodle that you intend to send out?
Jerome, were you about to say something?
Yeah, I would say if the group can be in agreement, I'm not sure where we will be with COVID in January. If the preference, I'm making some assumptions, but that would be a virtual meeting like this meeting. I think just getting some of those baseline things, making sure we're not only in agreement, but in understanding that what the realities might be in a couple of weeks from the meeting. Typically, of course, or historically, we've had these meetings at City Hall. You know, things are a little different now than years past. So that's all that I can think of. Jelani, I don't know if you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, and Jerron reminded me of that point, you know, given our COVID restrictions, I would anticipate there's going to be probably a remote format. We'll have to map out exactly what that'll look like. Of course, it's more engaging in person, but we definitely want to comply with restrictions and stay safe. So it's likely that this will be in some form of a remote format, much like this, Zoom, probably. But, you know, those details will definitely be sent out to you guys ahead of time.
Do any commission members feel they need to add anything before we just revert this to sending out a doodle that we could all apply to digitally?
Good plan.
Okay, great. Do we need to, Mr. Hollis or Mr. Biggs, do we need to take a vote on that in any way?
I don't think so. Just make sure everyone knows what a doodle poll is. Let's not make any assumptions here.
Sure. Yeah,
I
so
didn't
we'll
know
send
what a
out
doodle poll
something.
was till last year, but it's an electronic way of counting what your preference is for the date. It's pretty straightforward. If I can do it, you can.
Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification, though. Great, then we're able to move on to our final bit of the agenda tonight, which is to discuss nominations for the Humanitarian of the Year Award. And I wanted to just start us off with, does anyone want to make a nomination to begin with and make a case or present them to the commission?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, before we do that, if I may, could Jelani just give a 2-minute sort of wrap up or synopsis of the Humanitarian Award, just to recap the audience and our commissioners as far as what we've done in the past and what the selection criteria have been, some of those things, so that we can have a more informed discussion, if it pleases the chair.
Absolutely. I think that sounds excellent. Mr. Biggs?
Sure. So historically, this has been a person that is a resident of High Point that we feel has been impactful and really rolled up their sleeves and done some things in the community. And so what you want to keep in mind are folks that are directly engaging with the community. Joe Williams was last year's. And then we had Carl Vierling the year before. He's the head of the Greater High Point Food Alliance. And so, you know, those are the folks that we're looking at for this award, folks that are rolling up their sleeves, getting involved in the community, align themselves with the values of the commission that promote equity, goodwill, and are really being impactful in the community. Mr. Chair.
Excellent. Thank you for that summary, Mr. Biggs. Does anyone have a nomination that they'd like to bring to the commission?
This is Vice Chair Davis. I was like to put Patrick Harmon's name in the pot. The Harmon Hayden Foundation.
Sure. Can you talk about maybe anything that particularly for the members of the commission who maybe don't know Patrick Harmon? Can you talk about anything in particular that
he's well, he does a lot with our community gardens. He does he's been very, very impactful with community gardens. He also been very impactful with the food alliance up on Washington Street. The community what is that? It's not community garden. It's a wow, my train of thought went away from me. It was where a lot of gardeners bring in produce to sell.
A farmer's market? Is it a farmer's market?
Right there, yeah, yes, farmer's market on Washington Street, and it's all organic. Most of it's organic. He's done that. He's also came up with the idea of, which a lot of you may not know, that went through the CAC program, but a lot of these porta johns that we're seeing around town now to help a lot of homeless people have places to use the restroom, to clean up, to try to help maybe slow the curb the virus, COVID virus, by keeping their hands clean and things like that. So those are just some of the things he's done that I've dealt with him. So
thank you, Mr. Davis. That's a great nomination. I think that's excellent. Does anyone else have someone they'd like to nominate? In that case, I'd like to nominate someone, it's actually two someones. I'd like to nominate Jackie and Corvin Davis, who run the group D Up. Jackie is the executive director and Corvin is the CEO of D Up. This organization is ostensibly kind of a summer camp that focuses on basketball, but it has been so much more, both historically and especially this past year. D-Up works a lot to work with youth to establish good leadership skills, good health skills. They especially work a lot with nutrition and leadership, foundational building. And they have done a lot this year in particular. Summer camps in particular have not fared that well during COVID because of restrictions. But Jackie and Corvin, as members of their community, have instead extended all that they can. So even back in March, as soon as things were being shut down, every Tuesday, they packed boxes and organized volunteers and staff to distribute these boxes to the 50 children that D-Up serves and their families. And these included food, hula hoops, board games, both to encourage proper nutrition and activities and to kind of supplement what was happening in schools. And then they also, this year, as part of that, have then expanded their community garden from 2 raised beds to 12 raised beds. This community garden is called the Eatery Sprout Education Garden Program. And it is run and managed by D-Up staff, but they have used this to grow food that they can then promote and send out as boxes to their family members so that everyone is getting the nutrition they need. So this has been a phenomenal thing. They've also been fantastic at building partnerships. So the Eatery Sprout Education Garden Program was ultimately funded in part by the American Heart Association, the branch that is located here at High Point University. A lot of the students helped raise, I believe it was something like $15,000 to make this possible. And they've been just working with everyone under the sun, from the YWCA to a couple relations groups, to basically promote child well-being in this time. And they've been active on Washington Street. They are also related to Mr. Davis's suggestion, they have also worked closely with Patrick Harmon to create an amazing space that the kids can then go and play basketball outside during this time. So they're really cool folks working here in the city.
Mr. Chair, one thing I need to ask, which I agree with, and they are great people, and they do a lot of great things. But I'm not sure if they really qualify, because with one of the qualifications, I believe that Mr. Briggs or Mr. Hollins has said, we're looking for residents of High Point, and I don't believe they are residents, are they?
I guess I don't know that for sure. I thought they lived in the area.
I'm pretty sure they're residents of Greensboro.
And Mr. Chair, please correct me if I'm wrong. And also, you know, there's criteria, and we look at the language of that criteria, but they're not explicit rules. I think there may be mention of working in High Point as well. So, Mr. Chair, please correct me if I'm wrong. Are they based here in High Point, the DIA program?
Yeah,
oh,
they're
yes.
on Washington Street.
Sure. Yeah.
And again, I agree with Chair McCray. They do a lot of great work. They're great people. Matter of fact, I think their name had came up once before, but because they weren't residents of High Point, I wasn't sure if they would be qualified. That was one of the qualifications. I was under the influence of thinking, but like you said, it may not be in stone. So.
From a staff standpoint, excuse me, Mr. Chair, from a staff standpoint, we'll go back and look at our last. I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe in the past we've had a works in High Point, an organization that was based in High Point, that the organization was here, but maybe the people lived somewhere else. That may have been the case. Let us double check on that, but I do think there's an award and there's a spirit of the award, but I think most people with for a City of High Point award, I think most people would agree that the recipient would need to, their work or their residence and their work would need to be in the city. But we can check on some of those nuanced details and get back to the group. But I think everything that's been mentioned so far would fit past precedent of an award nomination.
Thank you, Mr. Hollis. And thank you, Mr. Davis, also for your institutional knowledge of kind of bringing that up. I really appreciate it. So that seems like something we'll need to research. And then also, are there any other nominees then? Okay. I'm a little unclear, and we'll ask Mr. Biggs or Mr. Hollis for clarification. Is this to vote on today, or are we just accepting nominations today to vote on at a later date?
Dylan.
Sure, it would be my recommendation that these are names just to be considered. I do think that potentially we could vote on these at the retreat, but Jerron, if you have a different approach to that.
Yeah, and I think this is a discussion. If the plan is to vote at the retreat, I think one of the big reasons why we wanted to do it this way was so that we'd have those names and people would be thinking about it. I don't know that anything would preclude us from between now and the retreat adding more names, as long as when that decision is made, sort of like the work plan, once we're at the retreat, I think that's when we would have all final names. But this is, if there are other people who commissioners want to consider, we would encourage, to do that research or homework as soon as possible. But I don't even think we need to vote on the names that will be discussed at the retreat. I think this is a good conversation and dialogue. If we don't get any other names, I think we've covered enough ground here where that retreat vote would be for the Humanitarian Year Award would be a seamless process.
And just a reminder to what Dron's saying, this past week I did send everyone the link to the criteria and the form that needs to be filled out for the nominees that were mentioned tonight, and any ones that you may identify between now and the retreat, you will need to enter that information into the form at the link that was provided.
Great. Excellent. So that kind of closes this business tonight. It seems like we have two that have been nominated tonight, Patrick Harmon and then Jackie and Corvin Davis. And it seems like that could be something that we bring up at the retreat. And if there are other nominees that you come up with between now and then, you can submit them. And then Mr. Davis and I will work on submitting these formally through the process that Mr. Biggs just described. We're going to then move on to are there any additional items and considerations that you'd like the commissioners would like to bring up as something to discuss before we close?
I'd just like to say I really appreciate you standing in for us tonight. I think you've done an excellent job. Work did come into play at the last minute, so I just like to say thank you for standing in for me.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve this committee. And it is really quite an honor to step into Chair Dev's shoes. So with that, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'd like to make a motion.
Kim, you're muted. Okay, Willie has made a motion. Would anyone like to second that motion?
This is Kim. I'll second it.
Excellent. Thank you. We have the motion seconded. Can we vote to adjourn? I'll have Tammy run a roll call on that. Or do we need to vote on that, Mr. Hollis?
Is there a question? Just want to keep all those Robert rules, procedure orders in place. Is there a question? And then if there are no discussion, then we can go into the vote.
I have a question. Who actually made the motion? I think Commissioner Barker was muted. Who made the motion?
Commissioner Davis made the motion.
Okay.
And then Commissioner Barker seconded it.
I got you. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, I only accepted the audible one, and Miss Barker was unfortunately muted. I saw her lips moving though. Great. Then then Tammy, you can run the roll call for us.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Clark.
Aye.
Commissioner Davis.
Aye.
Commissioner Iqbal.
Aye.
Commissioner Barker.
Aye.
Commissioner McCray.
Aye.
Commissioner Price.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
As a vote of 7-0, the meeting has now been adjourned at 8:13.
All right, you guys, happy holidays.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
You too. Thanks, everyone.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.